Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining our brief discussion on securing airspace at our borders. I'm John Verico. I'm the Chief of Media and Community Relations at the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology Directorate, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Our talk today is part of our Whole of Government Research and Development showcase on mitigating evolving threats and understanding the convergence of technology. Our focus is on how investments in research, science, and technology are enhancing our nation's security, especially in the face of emerging threats. In adapting to a changing world, DHS is assessing new threats to determine better approaches, methods, and tools for securing our homeland and enhancing our frontline operations. Small, unmanned aircraft systems, what some people call drones, are highly popular with the hobbyist crowd, as well as in the film industry and in commerce and in other places. And we've long since acknowledged the need to open up the national airspace to these types of vehicles, while at the same time needing to ensure that they're not being used inappropriately nor becoming a hazard. Our discussion today will touch on both the proactive use of these new tools as well as investigating the potential risks and mitigating them. Today is about sharing perspectives, so you're familiar with how DHS is delivering solutions that keep the nation safe and secure. So for our discussion today, let me introduce our panel of experts. First is Tim Bennett, who's the Program Manager for Air Domain Awareness at the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. Phil Mattson is our Standards Executive at the Science and Technology Directorate as well. Also with us is Scott Campbell, who is the Air Domain Awareness Portfolio Manager for Customs and Border Protection's Air and Marine Operations. And Captain Scott Craig is with the United States Coast Guard. Also, Teddy Demore with the Department of Homeland Security's National Urban Security Technology Laboratory, commonly known as NewSteel. So thank you all for joining us today. I'm so thrilled to be with such a distinguished panel. So let's get right into the questions. And let's start off basically with Phil Mattson and Scott Craig. What are some of the challenges and opportunities of using UAS in operational settings?
So thank you, John. So in order to effectively employ and operate UAS unmanned aircraft systems, one must understand the system's capabilities and limitations, and also to understand the operator's proficiency. The use of standardized test methods is key in achieving these objectives. Standardized test methods provide the means to measure and evaluate key performance parameters such as range, duration of flight, station keeping, visual acuity, sensor integration, communications, and many other factors. When the standardized test methods are embedded into test events, demonstrations, and operational scenarios, it allows for reproducible and comparable results. This then supports the informed procurement decisions and development and validation of CONOPS, concepts of operations, for the use of the device. These same test methods that characterize the performance of the UAS can also be used to train, measure operator proficiency, and certify UAS operators. The Response Robot Standardized Test Method Development Program, which is funded by DHS&T, with the technical work performed at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. The standards are published by ASTM International. Test data from this program has informed the procurement of over $200 million worth of ground, aquatic, and aerial robot systems worldwide. These standards are the basis for first responder UAS operator training and certification, and are widely adopted by several organizations across the nation and around the world. The team that develops the test methods was just nominated for the Service to America Medal, or the SAMI Award. This team previously received the 2020 Presidential Years of Government Award, among other awards. These are resounding endorsements and validation of the impact of the program. The use of these standardized test methods is key in supporting the effective transition and use of this standards-enabled capability. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Phil. That really puts things in perspective, making sure that everything is standardized. So, Scott Craig, how does this work in your operational world for the Coast Guard?
Hi, John. Yeah, sure. Well, let me start with the opportunities. So UASs offer the ability to kind of enhance and expand the capabilities of our manned assets. So when I say manned assets, our cutters, our boats, our airplanes, and helicopters. And we're using them operationally right now. We have the Scan Eagle on our national security cutter. We're eventually going to have 11 national security cutters. And that provides, 12 hours of endurance out to about 70 miles around the cutter. So really helps out with our, right now, our law enforcement missions that we're doing primarily in the Western Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. On the challenges side, we still have some airspace issues we've got to overcome. So there's some restrictions on operating these UASs, particularly near shore in U.S. airspace, where we've got to get to where we can operate them beyond visual line of sight. So where the operator doesn't have to physically see the UAS. And we're working with DHS, S&T, CBP, and others in trying to come up with the right technologies that allow that to happen.
Yeah, I'd like to also jump in here and talk about what we're doing. S&T is working with both the standard side of it, and we're also working with our components. As Scott mentioned, that we're working with CBP, ICE, Coast Guard, other ones to enable the use of the UASs because it's critical for their mission because it allows them to greatly expand their manpower without having to add staff to their group. So it gives us more coverage, better coverage, and safer coverage. And as part of that, we've been working with FAA, DOD, and with NASA on the UTM, or UAS Traffic Management System, which is going to be required to be able to get us to be able to do it, like Scott said, fly beyond line of sight. Right now, you need to fly where you see the aircraft to make sure you don't have interference. We're working very hard with them and other federal agencies to come up with technologies that allow us to be able to fly beyond line of sight using detection systems, remote ID, and other parts that then will enable it so they can do their missions better and safer.
Great, thanks, Tim. And it seems like, there's a lot going on in the airspace, and obviously federal government agencies and DHS are not the only people using drones or are looking to use them and deploy them in various means. So are, local law enforcement, emergency response agencies, and so is e-commerce, and the hobbyists and all other types of folks are looking at putting things into the air. So this whole air traffic situation is getting curious. So that leads me to my next question. With all this increased activity of both known and unknown vehicles in the air, what are we doing to ensure security? Scott Campbell, would you like to help us with that?
Sure. Thank you, John. I think it's first to put into context what Air and Marine Operations as part of CBP does for the air security mission. First and foremost, we've been doing this for decades, using sensors from the DoD, from FAA, and other sources. What we're doing currently to look at the small drone threat is we're implementing pilot programs. We're exploring technology with DHS, S&T, and we're looking at the overall concept of operation going forward. How are we going to see these small targets, these off-the-shelf drones that people are flying? How are we going to define and really understand the threat that goes on south of the border and work very, very closely with that leading edge technology? Tim mentioned UTM and USS, the UAS Traffic Management function. We are really exploring that because as Air and Marine Operations, we have the responsibility for air domain awareness and overall domain awareness for the Department of Homeland Security. So we want to know everything that's going on in our airspace. Currently, the small drones are a very small radar cross-section, not able to be seen by current FAA radars and other things. But we want to know the cooperative traffic in our airspace along the borders, and the UTM is going to bring that capability to us. First and foremost, it's flight safety, of course, for the Air and Marine Operations air assets that are flying along our borders that we're responsible for. And secondly, it's just going to give us overall situational awareness for friendly drones flying in the airspace. If we know who's supposed to be there and who is cooperating, we see something else out there, that drone is probably a nefarious asset or someone that's not doing what they should in the airspace.
Thank you, Scott Craig. How about how does this apply to the Coast Guard and along our water borders?
Yeah, I think the UAS problem in the maritime environment is a little bit behind where it is for, say, Border Patrol, because they, you can easily hop a UAS over the Mexican border into the United States. It's a little more difficult when you're going over large expanses of water. But we do have concerns that this is going to continue to happen more and more. And we've actually also seen, in addition to unmanned aircraft systems, we've seen unmanned maritime vessels, just very small vessels that have made their way up, from Mexico onto the Southern California coast. So definitely an area of concern for us, an emerging area of concern. And certainly this project that Tim Bennett's running, the Air Domain Awareness Project on the northern border, we really hope that's going to answer some of the questions on, how we combat this.
Excellent, and what a perfect segue into the next question. And so let's talk about a real world application of the Air Domain Awareness Program. Tim and Teddy, what can you tell us?
Hey, John, I'll jump in. Representing Newsteel, we evaluate technologies, and for the Air Domain Awareness Program, we are evaluating technologies that are able to complete air domain awareness for our stakeholders. So we design, set up, and execute field testing to evaluate technologies and sensors and assess their performance to detect, track, and identify aircrafts in the national airspace, aircraft being both unmanned aircraft, drones, as you mentioned, and also manned aircrafts flying at low altitude. And these manned aircrafts are small sport utility aircrafts, like ultralight and super cub aircrafts, and they could fly under 1,000 feet to 5,000 feet in the air. And we evaluate sensors to see how well they can track, identify, and detect these aircrafts flying in a national airspace.
Yeah, going along with what Teddy was saying is that this whole program that he's mentioning here is one suggested to us from Congress that we should look into, and that is covering the northern border. It's not the only activities we have going on right now to give us total air domain awareness. We're doing stuff on the borders, around cities, other places, airports you probably hear about. But the big program that we're working on right now is to find technologies that we can put from Maine to the state of Washington and cover the area from ground level to 8,000 foot. Air and Marine, who was my partner on this, they're covering from 500 foot to 8,000 foot. And Science Technology, we're doing from 500 foot to ground level. And in doing that, we noticed that there really are 4 different types of places or regions along the border that we need to address. And each one has its specific problems and issues. So we picked the plains because that's a nice flat area that we need to cover. And we have quite a few states, not Montana, but North Dakota, Minnesota, and others that have very flat areas out on the border. Then we get into the mountainous areas like Montana, Idaho, the state of Washington, that has deep valleys and issues there that we need to cover. And then we have maritime along the Great Lakes and along St. Lawrence Seaway. And finally, we have the urban areas. So we have decided to do demonstrations that Newsteel will be leading under Teddy's control to find technologies in each one of these spaces, combination of them, because it's not going to be a single unit, that we can put together that will give us coverage from our ground level up to the 500 foot, and that later we can marry it in with our air marine operations and see how great a coverage we have from ground level to 8,000 foot. Teddy, want to add any more to
that? Yes, Tim. So we just completed a air domain awareness technology demonstration in North Dakota just a few days ago, last week. And pretty much that was the first initial kickoff of a series of testing and test demonstrations of different air domain awareness sensors. And the next event we'll have is going to be, we'll be in Montana to replicate the mountainous region in part of our different terrains that we want to test these sensors in.
So I'm going to kind of surprise you guys with one last question. And what is your key takeaway for our audience today? So in one sentence, what would you want people to remember about what we've talked about today? Start off with you, Tim.
Okay, I think the big takeaway that I like to see from here is that DHS, S&T, and DHS in all is working with all the government to solve our issues, to make sure we do understand what's in the sky, to provide you a safe and secure environment to live in.
Anyone else want to share a takeaway? Would you like our audience to remember?
Yeah, just again, when you buy, and everybody's aware of the importance of standards. When you buy a piece of equipment, a toaster, does it have the UL mark on it? That shows that it meets certain standards. Standards allow us to set performance levels and helps you understand the capabilities and limitations of the system, and allows you to use it appropriately and safely. And the standards help support the informed procurement and the effective operation of the technology, be it UAS, detection equipment, or whatever. But again, you look at you pick up your computer, look at the back. There's a whole series of marks on there that indicate various levels of standards and certification. Thank you,
John. I was going to say that unmanned systems, they're the future. You hear a lot about autonomous vehicles. We're looking at the same things with these unmanned systems, both to use them offensively and also defensively, and counter anybody that's trying to use them in a nefarious way. So we're going to continue to see that, and it's going to be a more and more important part of what we all do in government, again, both on the offensive and the defensive end.
Thank you, Scott. All right, and so with that, folks, we are out of time. So I will say thank you very much, everyone. I hope that our audience found our brief talk today to be helpful. And it's important for us to be clear so that you know about what our vision is and impacts to the nation. We will have some follow-up information about where you can find more information about this topic, as well as more information about the rest of our showcase program and how you can connect with us. So thank you again to our guests, S&T's Tim Bennett and Phil Mattson, CBP's Scott Campbell, Coast Guard's Scott Craig, and New Steel's Teddy Demore. I'm John Verico, and thank you again for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of the showcase. Thank you.